is, I'm having trouble advancing it here, Gretchen.
Okay, click back on your PowerPoint and then click Advance.
Use kind of a metaphor for stackable credentials, and I think many of you probably have known an Eagle Scout, and Eagle Scouts represent about 4% of all of the young men who've gone through the Boy Scout program, and they move through a series of classifications, starting with a tenderfoot, and then to second class, first class, star, life, and then Eagle. And as they move along, they earn merit badges, and those merit badges are competency-based, really a badge that the young man earns for demonstrating knowledge in the area in which the instruction and the support guidance is provided for that particular merit badge. And Scouts have to live the Scout Oath and the Scout Law to be Eagles. They have to earn 21 merit badges. 17 of those are required, so they have 4 discretionary merit badges which represent their interest. And so as you can see, they build on those merit badges as they go through the various classifications of scouting. And in the end, they have to have demonstrated they've been in a leadership position. They do a culminating service project. They have to then go before or participate in a leadership conference, go through a board of review, which is a group of Scout masters and community members and parents who make a determination that this young person has indeed gained the knowledge and skills to be an Eagle Scout. So it's kind of a metaphor for what a stacking of credentials looks like. In our time together this afternoon, I'd like to give you a little bit of a look at what a CTE or career stack would look like. Go through the New York State graduation and completion options, which includes opportunities to get certificates, particularly in the approved programs. And then a little bit of a dive into college and completion in New York State, 5 ways to 21 million jobs, then a little bit about credentials, their type, their purpose, and what's the criteria for a good and useful certificate. And then conclude our discussion with why it matters and some ideas on things that you and others might consider as we make this a more deliberate part of the process of what we do with young people in our career and technical education programs. Here's an example of a stack, and if you look at the stack, you start at the bottom, you get a high school diploma, and then a certificate for career readiness, which could be a work readiness credential, which young people can now earn as part of their CTE programs or as part of the CDOS credential or pathway. And then you see a certificate for precision machining, then an associate of applied science, then another certificate for production technician, then your associate's degree within the manufacturing specialty, bachelor's degree in engineering, and then a certificate for manufacturing engineering, and then finally a master's degree in engineering. So as a person goes through programs and employment, they can build this stack of credentials. Sometimes these certificates are gained in an education setting like high school or community college or a college or university. Sometimes they are paid for by employers. And in many instances, they really lead to a larger set of career responsibilities and increased wages. Why do stackable credentials, why do certificates, if indeed you think about it that way, why does that matter for a graduate? First of all, employers really want to know what you know. And proving that by getting the credential really matters even more, because it demonstrates that you have met some set of predetermined industry-based standards, which allows you to demonstrate to the employer that you have a certain set of specific skills. A diploma does not do that for you. Diploma basically defines that you have been in a certain set of courses for a specified amount of time, and that you have passed those courses based upon some assessment of the instructor. Of course, what you pursue matters a great deal as well. Certain majors and certain fields yield a larger economic benefit. Sometimes young people will forego that benefit because they are entering into something that they're passionate about. And a little later on, we'll talk a little bit about the earnings benefit of certain certificates. Unfortunately, the other thing that matters here is your sex. Young men tend to earn more than young women, even if they hold the same credentials. Although there are certain credentials that will give young women an economic advantage. So your sex is part of that as well. And then finally, that you're able to communicate that knowledge and skills to the employer. That comes in the form of the certificate itself and what the standards for that certificate are. But they also come in your ability to present to the employer, to be interviewed, and to demonstrate, you know, those soft skills that that employers also value. Here is a profile of a CTE graduate, and you can see from this that the first of all, the ability to enroll and succeed in credit-bearing and continuing education classes and training is really important. I happen to have been a former employer where we hired high school graduates to work with individuals who had Down syndrome, and we had to train those young people to do med administrations, to do shift notes, to do all kinds of care protocols. And many of those young people would come to us without the reading and math skills that were necessary for them to be successful. So it's not just a matter of being able to be successful in credit-bearing courses, it's also to be successful in employer-based training. In a minute, I'll share with you how important that employer-based training is as well. Earning power in the form of a credible industry-based credential, and credible is important here. There are certain credentials that are out there that have not necessarily been well validated by industry, that do not yield a significant amount of earnings advantage. For example, knowledge of Word and PowerPoint are really kind of threshold skills, although you can get a mouse certification in them. But a real credible is one that is industry-based, and we'll go through a little bit later some criteria for an industry-based, for a credible industry-based credential. Of course, the career-ready personal and workplace practices, the technical skills that get you the job, these are the things, unfortunately, that if a young person doesn't have them in place, they will lose the job. Advanced standing or dual credit in a post-secondary situation is also an outcome that really every CTE graduate should have. And then a career pathway plan. What are your next steps? What are your goals? Not that that can't be changed, but that you have some essence of a direction. And this profile is basically what NYS, which is the New York State Association Career and Technical Education, advocates as the outcome for a career-ready graduate. In New York State, we have a lot of ways to graduate. If you ever have looked at the advisory that the department has sent out, I think it's 7 or 8 pages long, and it's relatively complex. And guidance folks kind of struggle to make sure that they have taken all of those possible notions into account. And in many instances, particularly with our smaller school districts, some of these diplomas are not accessible to young people. But the important thing to note here is the very last bullet, where we're talking about any of the above with a technical endorsement. We would really consider those to be the kind of the gold standard diploma, where you have particularly a Regents diploma with an advanced designation, even with honors, and a technical endorsement is a pretty powerful way to leave school. And if you have that technical endorsement, you meet all of those criteria that NYS has developed for the profile of a career-ready graduate. Here are the 4 career education pathways in New York State. The CTE 4+1, which allows students to substitute an approved credential examination for one of the Regents examinations. And then you have the CTE credential, which is not necessarily a diploma option, but for students who would ordinarily struggle, and a way of documenting a set of work-based skills that they would have. There's really 2 options. One is to, and you can see option 1 in the middle of this page. They have to have a career plan. They have to have achieved the CTE Learning Standards 1, 2, and 3A. And they have to have at least 216 hours of CTE coursework and/or work-based learning experiences, of which 54 hours must be work-based. And they have to have a complete employability profile. Or they can test into this credential using a recognized credential like the National Work Readiness Credential. And then finally, you have the CTE pathway, which is a graduation pathway. And that allows the students to pass 4 of the Regents exams and then meet the same kinds of requirements that are outlined in option 1 and option 2 within the CTE credential. We spend a lot of time to young people talking about college as a consummate next step. And probably I'm old enough to remember the Nation at Risk, and for that intervening over more than 35 years, almost 35 years, the focus has been on bachelor's degrees. But the realities are pretty different. Right now, only about 30% of young adults earn a bachelor's degree by their mid-20s. On the other hand, 27% of those with a post-secondary license or a certificate, credentials that are short of the associate's degree, earn more than the average bachelor's degree recipient. It's a very interesting figure, and that comes out of the Georgetown Center on the Workforce and the Economy, and was noted in the Pathway to Prosperity report. This year, there will be 18 million openings in blue-collar fields, and 2.7 million will require a post-secondary credential. That's short of an associate's degree. But as we'll show you in a few minutes, they're a very good way to a well-paying job and for more education. So the college for all mantra might be what we've been espousing, but the hard reality is fewer than 1 in 3 complete a bachelor's degree. And then the numbers on community college completions are not as good as we might like. 23% who enter complete in 3 years. Only 61% enter in the second semester. And I know that many educators have the experience of where a young person goes off to community college, and then all of a sudden they reappear in the community or back at school, and they've left either in the middle of or late in the first semester, or have not gone back to that second semester. And then 30%, 34% who enter a community college complete in 10 years. And in New York State, 58% who enter four-year schools complete in 6 years. The other thing that we fight is the notion of vocational education versus CTE. And the CTE piece, the credentialing is different. So with vocational education, you're learning to do, you get direct instruction, then you go do the work. It's job-specific skills in the skilled trades was pretty much the definition, and that remains the view of many parents and even many educators of what CTE is. It was usually preparation for lifetime employment. It was not seen as a college track, and unfortunately, many young men of color got tracked into vocational education, and that has worked against the minority communities being accepting and embracing CTE as a legitimate way forward for more education. It was seen as apart from academics. You went to the shop and you went to English class, and there was not much crossover or interaction or focus on the two in both the shop and in the academic coursework. Young people were credentialed by diploma, and they used text and manual-based information, and usually vocational education, at least in New York State, was delivered in trade and technical high schools. CTE is a bit different. First of all, doing to learn. We talk about problem and project-based learning, giving kids real-world circumstances and the opportunity with unpredictable situations to apply their knowledge and skills. Specific and soft job skills. Yes, the technology skills are important, but there also needs to be an emphasis on those work-based, personal, and work skills that are necessary for successful work in the current workplace, which is very geared to group and teamwork. You're prepping for employment based on skills and projects. Employment has changed. I'm a good example of that. I work on a project-based basis. People come to me for certain things, certain consulting services. I provide those, and when those are done, the work goes away. And that's the whole notion of what many people call gig economy. Our focus is not only on career ready, but on college ready, and a focus on convergence with academics. The English teacher and the CTE teacher working together, reinforcing the instruction that's provided in each. The English teacher or the math teacher or the science teacher being knowledgeable about why their skills and content are important to the workplace and to the work that the young person is trying to pursue. As well for the CTE teacher to understand that there are embedded academics and that the CTE coursework can reinforce the academics and also make it very real. You know the question, why do I have to learn this? Well, if you talk about a particular math skill in a construction class, then it becomes very real, and the young person can see how that relates to their future and to their interests. You're credentialed by diploma and certification. And that's where these certificates come in to play. And digitally based information is the basis for this. For example, in the automotive programs, there are no manuals now. They go online, they look up the information and often get procedures to correct certain technical flaws in engines or in the cars. And CTE is in all schools and for all students. There are 5 ways to get to move along the path to a bachelor's degree and to those 8 million jobs I mentioned earlier, plus the 29 million jobs that really rely on career development and practices. And there are really 5 of them here. There's apprenticeships, there's employer-based training, secondary certificates, the associate's degrees, and industry-based certifications. Apprenticeships, as many of you I hope know, are paid, they're supervised, they're on the job, and they help develop a relationship between the employer, perhaps a labor union, and the job seekers. And there's a big payoff in apprenticeships. You see from the bottom bullet that the net value of lifetime earning gain of $269,000 per apprenticeship, compared with $96,000 to $123,000 for each individual who attended community college. Post-secondary certificates are certificates that would be earned following graduation from high school. These are usually provided at the community college level or at a technical school. They represent an investment of time that is less than a full post-secondary degree program. So they're a cost-effective alternative for high school graduates because of their short, focused training and earnings advantage. The associate's degree, and there's obviously a place here. The general education requirements, selective liberal arts coursework, and all of that are part of that. The associates of applied sciences tend to be more occupationally focused. As opposed to post-secondary certifications, associate degrees require 2 years of instructional time and earning 60 to 70 credits. And there is some earnings advantage to the degrees with men, and this gets at the discrepancy between the earnings of men and women. $49,000 annually for men, while women earn $35,000. Compared with $41,000 for men with a high school diploma and $28,000 for women with a high school diploma. So there's an advantage there of between $7,000 and $8,000 depending upon your gender. And you can see that's the earning advantage of an associate's degree. And then we have the industry-based certifications, and they address problems that diplomas currently face: relevance, accountability, and consistency. The certifications demonstrate what you can do against a set of industry determined and established standards for the technology involved in a particular area of the certification. And as you can see, they reflect standards and competencies that better reflect the industry. These certifications are frequently portable. You can cross state lines with them. If you look at the automobile, EASC certifications and NATEF, those are nationally recognized. And so an employer in California would know that if a young person has an ASC certification, what particular skills and knowledge that young person has. So that portability is critical. And if you read a lot of online advertisements, if you'd spend a moment and go plow through some of those, these industry-based certifications are often a prerequisite for the work. and they can be pursued at many levels, including high school. Here are the types of credentials. There are core credentials, which would be no minimum level of education or a level below an associate's degree with no work experience. For example, young people in an automotive program can earn one of several automotive service excellence certifications that are approved by NATEF. And then there are advanced certificates, and those would be level of an associate's degree or 2 years of work experience, or obtaining a core level certification first. For example, advanced engineering engine performance specialist, which is a NATEF certification. Specialty, which corresponds to a recognized occupation, and many of these are not only certifications, they're also licenses, like an oncology nurse. And then you have skills certifications for basic skills, or may or may not be related to a product. I'll call cardiopulmonary resuscitation, Word, Excel would be those skills. And then you have the product type of certifications, which are based in proprietary, usually in some sort of proprietary hardware or software products like Cisco. And here's some criteria that folks ought to use when they're looking at selecting a credential, such as one that they might want to use with an approved CTE program. First of all, is it valued and demanded by employers? In the CTE program, is this really what employers will value and want as they begin to select folks to hire? Are they portable? Are the skills learned, are they transferable and provide broad opportunities, both locally, regionally, statewide, nationally? Are they stackable? Is there something that comes after this? A new certification, a new degree that leads to more opportunities for continuous or advanced training and education. Do they lead to higher wages, career advancement, or increased job security? And the credential is offered as part of a sequential, non-duplicative pathway from high school through continuing education. Oops. Here are the approved credentials in New York State. There are 30 of them. There also is the possibility that if a district has a CTE program and is seeking to make it accessible for the 4+1 pathway, or to get the program approved as a CTE approved program, they can apply to the state education department to have that certification exam approved. And you can find access to that on the State Education Department worksite under CTE. And here's some of the advantages, and here are some very common certificates that can be earned, not the particular certificates, but in these areas. And in many of these areas, there are multiple certifications. You can see, for example, in computer and information services that the in-field earnings premium is 115%. And they are 9% of all the certificates that are earned. And about 15% of folks in their field have, in computer and information services, have a certificate. So if you have a certificate, your in-field earnings are average around $70,000. Some of these are not as viable. For example, if you look at food service, about 31% in the field have a certificate, but the earnings premium is not there. So it matters what major you're looking at, what certificate you're looking at. So those things should all be weighed as well. And the welding and fabrication and machining and design build is part of the metalworking piece. And you can see that there's unfortunately, only a small earnings premium in that. The certificates give young people this ability to go to work. And we know that 4 out of 5 folks who are in some form of education program are working. 2 out of 4 work full-time. And they average about 30 hours per week. 50% are financially independent, which means that they depend on work to help them live and pay for their education, and 25% have children. So the certificates are valuable in that they provide earning power. They also are obtainable in something less than a full degree program, and can get you started earning a wage that will help support additional education that you might wish to pursue. And there's there's an advantage to this as well. It can lead to better employment opportunities because you have that work experience, and because you have that certificate as a start. And CTE is career focused, so being in a CTE program helps you get an advantage when you're looking for that work. And in the short run, students with that knowledge and with those certificates secure positions that pay more. And they develop career relevant skills, gain work experience that pays dividends as they go forward. Here's the challenge for folks with getting kids interested in pursuing credentials and building that stack. First of all, we talk a lot about those kids. Not everybody is a college-bound student. That kind of language really puts limits around kids, and that there are a group that are ready to go to college, there are a group that's not, even while we speak this college for all mantra. So we have to be careful in the use of our language. Graduation plans and college going are 2 big pressures on guidance folks and the student support groups in high schools. Get the kid to diploma and get them admitted to college. And then many of our colleagues, particularly on the academic side of the house and even in the counseling and support group, do not have a real deep knowledge of what the contemporary workplace requires. And so that works against getting good, solid guidance and direction for kids. Explaining the earnings impact of credentials, and I hope today's kind of helped some of you think a little bit more about that. Access to CTE programs with credentials. We still have, there are only 950 approved CTE programs in New York State, and there are a lot of programs out there that are being offered that don't necessarily provide a credential as part of the outcome for the program. And then how to persuade students and parents to take advantage of CTE and credentials. This notion that we mentioned earlier about the vocational education perspective still exists, and folks kind of cling to that. And then there's the demands that are placed on counselors. Counseling versus guidance. The kids come to school with us with so many issues and involvements and pressures, and that sometimes the guidance part of it gets set behind because of the immediacy needs of the emotional involvements that kids might have. Here are some suggestions on what we can do. First of all, change the nature of the career-ready conversation, both with the public, the parents, the Board of Education, the staff, from those kids to all kids. every kid needs to be college ready. Every kid is going through some set of educational experiences to go to work, to earn their own bread and support their family, and to be a valued member of our communities. Build a pathway system with business and industry and post-secondary partners. These are the folks that really, they're the customers of our system. They are the places where our young people are going to go to work. They know what the contemporary workplace needs, and using them to help you build a post-secondary path or a pathway system makes a great deal of sense. And then we've got to do a better job of providing information to the school faculty, student support personnel, and others on the value of CTE and the earning power of credentials. And here's one more example of a stack of welding credentials. A National Work Readiness Certificate, a Manufacturing Skills Standard Council certification, certified production technician, certified logistics technician. Then you get up to the American Welding Society certifications, where you get into certified inspectors, associate inspectors, and senior inspectors, and then a degree program. So again, what we're doing in high school is hopefully giving kids a start on building a stack of credentials, which will include other credentials in their field of career interest and degrees as they move forward into their career and educational experience. So, certificates are a gateway to gainful employment and college degrees. That concludes my presentation, and if folks are still around, I'd be glad to take some questions.
All right, great. Thanks, Ed. We'll give everyone a couple minutes and see if any questions come in, and then we'll wrap up. All right, it doesn't seem like we have any questions. So on behalf of the Technical Assistance Center, thank you to our attendees for joining us, and thank you to Ed for your presentation. And as a reminder, this presentation was recorded and will be posted on nyctecenter.org within 72 hours.